Hey guys, I've been trying out two replacement suppressor mount eco systems as an upgrade to the Phantom QD system on my YHM Resonator K and my R9. I swapped the Resonator K over to the Plan B compatible Reardon Atlas system, and I swapped the R9 over to YHM's own in-house SRX system. We'll talk about the Reardon Atlas Plan B ecosystem in another video. This time we're talking about the YHM SRX. For the most part, I like Yankee Hill suppressors. I think they're durable and a pretty good value, but one shortcoming is the factory mount system. YHM still ships all their cans with the Phantom QD system and an accompanying muzzle brake. The Phantom QD system isn't terrible. It's a fast attached suppressor mount with a ratcheting collar that keeps everything in place. The Phantom mounts and muzzle devices that come with their cans are the older generation, so the flash hiders and muzzle brakes are a lot longer, as are the Phantom adapters themselves. YHM also has the KERS adapter system, which is a much shorter mount designed to be used in conjunction with shorter flash hiders and muzzle brakes, but for some reason, as far as I know, those have never been shipped with their suppressors. The KERS system is an overall improvement of the original Phantom QD because it makes the whole system shorter and lighter at the cost of maybe a part of a decibel, which really is not something you're going to notice on anything shooting supersonic ammunition anyway. But some of the value of the YHM cans is lost when you have to buy a new mount and muzzle brake as soon as you get the thing home. The KERS system also has a lot of the same limitations as the original Phantom QD. It's got a spring-assisted locking collar on the back that lines up with some teeth on the end of the suppressor mount, and the odds that every mount will line up perfectly with every muzzle device are basically zero. You have to test multiple muzzle devices against potentially multiple mounts until you find one that actually locks up solidly enough not to allow the can to rotate slightly. I've talked about this before, so I won't cover it again in detail here, and also Focus Trip has demonstrated a loss of accuracy when using a Phantom mount and a Phantom muzzle device that don't mate up perfectly, which is, most of them. So that brings us to YHM's new SRX system. This is their new suppressor mount and family of muzzle devices, and it works with all of the suppressors that use the Phantom QD already. Technically, this is a hub-compatible system, so it's compatible with all suppressors that have the 1 3/8 by 24 rear threading, which includes YHM cans as well as tons of other cans on the market. The SRX system is much simpler than the Phantom QD. The muzzle devices all have a tapered section towards the front, and then the threads behind it. The suppressor threads on, hand tight, and that's it. There is no hard locking system. The suppressors are just tightened down on the threads, and then you get all of the friction and all of the gas seal of that tapered section at the front. This is becoming an increasingly popular way to attach suppressors because it turns out it just works really well. The cans don't walk off, and they also get a really nice repeatable seal every single time. They always tighten down to the same level, so you don't have to worry about a ratcheting collar being inconsistent or getting worn out. The muzzle devices for the SRX system are also a little bit cheaper than Phantom brakes and flash hiders, which is understandable because they don't have a multiple piece collar system with a spring and a little C-clamp at the back to keep it all together. This system is also resistant to carbon locking because that tapered seal keeps all of the junk from getting into the threads of either the suppressor mount or the muzzle device. This, by the way, is the exact same principle as the Plan B type mounts, including the Reardon Atlas, but I will point out that even though it's exactly the same type of suppressor mount, the actual diameters and threadings are different, so you can't use Reardon muzzle devices and YHM SRX stuff interchangeably. So let's talk about the available muzzle devices, because that really is one of the make or break factors when it comes to choosing a suppressor mount ecosystem. At least for now, SRX is completely a Yankee Hill thing. Nobody else is making SRX compatible stuff yet, at least as far as I know. Right out of the gate, the SRX system is available with a pretty comprehensive spread of muzzle devices, both flash hiders and muzzle brakes in 3 different lengths: the long, the short, and the minimalist. Another thing common to all of the currently available SRX muzzle devices is that they don't have to be timed. All of the flash hiders and muzzle brakes are neutrally ported, so you don't have to use shims to get them timed up properly, which is a huge boon when you're installing a suppressor because you can't just use a crush washer and get away with it. Personally, I hate stacking a bunch of shims to get a side-ported muzzle brake timed correctly. We are definitely going to come back to that when we talk about the Reardon Atlas system. The downside of neutrally ported muzzle devices is that they're never going to be quite as effective as ones with deliberately sized and positioned ports. The muzzle brakes, for example, don't have a huge amount of braking or compensating effect. In fact, since they're neutrally timed, they have almost no compensating effect. It's mostly just a brake. Considering most high-performance muzzle brakes on the market are both compensators and brakes and do an incredibly good job of keeping the muzzle still, that's still a trade-off I will happily take so I don't have to time the goddamn things. There are two potential issues to point out with the muzzle devices, at least the ones that are currently available so far. First is that there are a couple of omissions in the lineup. The long flash hider and muzzle brake are both available in 1/2 by 28 or 5/8 by 24 muzzle threading, so basically your standard 5.56 and 308. No problem there. The short brake and flash hider, though, are only available in 5/8 by 24 and some other weird thread patterns that I didn't even recognize. Maybe they're for fucking AKs or something. I tend to prefer flash hiders over muzzle brakes, and I like the short SRX flash hider better than the long one, but the short one's not available in 1/2 by 28, so can't put on a 5.56 rifle. The second issue to bring up is that the SRX system further reduces the overall length versus the Kurz system because this thing mounts extremely flush to the muzzle devices, almost beyond flush. If you look on the inside of the mount, the threads don't even start until maybe 2/10 of an inch in, which means that the suppressor slightly overhangs past where the threads of the muzzle device are. On the one hand, that's awesome. The system is extremely compact. But on the other hand, depending on the suppressor that you put these mounts on, the longer muzzle devices may actually not clear. They might run into the first baffle. That's the case with this suppressor, the YHM R9. This has a very short blast chamber, so this one cannot be threaded to the long flash hider and long brake. If I put the SRX mount onto, for example, my YHM Resonator K, that wouldn't be an issue. That suppressor has a much longer blast chamber. If you look at Yankee Hill's website, each of their suppressors has a muzzle device and mount compatibility matrix, so you know if something is actually going to fit or not. But yeah, I do find myself slightly limited with what I can mount the R9 to with the SRX system. For example, I'd sure like to have a 1/2 by 28 threaded short brake, or I can get one of the long brakes or flash hiders and just Dremel the top of it off. I don't think doing that to the long flash hider would be a great idea. It would essentially turn it into like some monstrosity 6-prong flash hider with very sharp and very fragile prongs. But it's not that difficult to do to the long muzzle brake, because the long muzzle brake and the short muzzle brake have basically the exact same geometry. It's just that one of them has a couple of extra little layers, and you can just cut the top two off, and you created your own short brake with 1/2 by 28 threads if you wanted. I'm not endorsing this course of action. I'm just saying it would totally work. Mission accomplished. So what's the verdict then? The SRX system is a huge improvement over the Phantom QD, and YHM has been needing to do this sort of thing for a long time, but they need to go one step further and actually start packaging this with their rifle suppressors. Just throw away the Phantom QD at this point. The other thing they could do is make it easier to buy an a la carte version of their suppressors. Just knock the price down a little bit and don't even bother including a mount or muzzle device. Although that would be them acknowledging that people are going to use those with aftermarket systems. And I understand that no suppressor manufacturer wants to do that for liability and warranty reasons. Even something as minor as just offering different SKUs of these suppressors with different mounts bundled. These things have been working great for me so far. They don't lock up, they're easy to use, easy to maintain, easy to install. I really, really like this system. And I like YHM cans, I just don't like that you have to buy them separately. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. If you like this channel, make sure you subscribe. If you'd like to support me, you can do so via Subscribestar, link in the video description. There are various bonuses for joining up, but I don't care to explain them to you now. You'll find out sooner or later. That sounded kind of ominous or maybe borderline sultry for reasons I didn't intend. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.